Good evening, and welcome back. Tonight we venture into the shadows between seasons, to a night when the veil grows thin, when the dead are said to walk, and when the harvest gives way to winter's cold embrace. This is the story of Halloween, ancient and ever-changing, sacred and profane, a night that belongs to neither the living nor the dead, but to something in between. Get cozy, settle in, and let's begin. Long before there were jack-o'-lanterns or trick-or-treaters, before costumes were bought in stores or candy-filled plastic buckets, there was a festival called Samhain. The word is pronounced Samhain, like the planting of seeds, though it marked not spring, but autumn's end. It was celebrated by the Celts, the ancient peoples of Ireland, Scotland, and Wales, on the night of October 31st, when summer's last breath gave way to winter's first whisper. The Celts divided the year not into 4 seasons, but into 2, the light half and the dark half. Samhain marked the boundary between them, a liminal time when the normal rules did not apply. It was their new year, the night when one year died and another waited to be born. And in that space, between endings and beginnings, the barrier between the world of the living and the world of the dead grew dangerously thin. On Samhain, the Celts believed spirits could cross over, not just any spirits, but the ghosts of the dead returning to visit their former homes. Some were benevolent, ancestors seeking warmth and welcome. Others were malevolent, wandering souls with unfinished business or darker intentions. The living had to be careful on this night, for the rules that governed the daylight world held no power in the darkness. To protect themselves, the Celts lit great bonfires on hilltops, feeding them with the bones of slaughtered cattle, hence bonfires, which over centuries became bonfires, then bonfires. These flames served multiple purposes. They honored the sun, which was weakening as winter approached. They provided light against the encroaching darkness, and most importantly, they were believed to frighten away evil spirits who feared the purifying power of fire. Around these fires, the Druids, the Celtic priests, performed rituals. They made prophecies about the coming year, reading omens in the flames and smoke. They offered sacrifices to appease the spirits and the gods, and the people wore costumes, animal skins and heads, disguising themselves so that wandering ghosts might mistake them for fellow spirits and pass them by without harm. When the rituals were complete, each family would take a flame from the communal bonfire back to their home to relight their hearth, carrying the sacred fire that would sustain them through the dark winter months. The ashes from the bonfire were scattered over fields to protect the land and ensure fertility for the coming year. This was not a night of frivolity, but of survival. The harvest was in, the stores were counted, and each family knew whether they had enough to last until spring. Animals that could not be fed through winter were slaughtered. The community came together, not to celebrate, but to prepare, to propitiate the forces beyond their control, to make peace with death so that life might continue. When Christianity spread through Celtic lands, beginning in the 5th century, the Church faced a dilemma. The old festivals were deeply rooted in the people's lives, tied to the agricultural cycle and the rhythm of the seasons. To simply forbid them would be to court rebellion. So the Church did what it often did. It absorbed the pagan traditions, baptized them, and gave them new meaning. In the 8th century, Pope Gregory III designated November 1st as All Saints' Day, also called All Hallows' Day, a time to honor all Christian saints and martyrs. The night before became All Hallows' Eve, which in time shortened to Halloween. A day later, November 2nd, was designated All Souls' Day, when prayers were said for all the faithful departed who had not yet reached heaven. The timing was not coincidental. By overlaying Christian holy days onto the pagan festival, the Church hoped to redirect the people's devotion from the old gods to the new. The bonfires remained, but now they honored Christian saints rather than Celtic deities. The costumes continued, but now they represented angels and demons, saints and sinners, rather than animal spirits. Yet the old beliefs did not die easily. They went underground, mingling with Christian practices, creating a hybrid celebration that was neither fully pagan nor fully Christian. People still left out food for the dead, but now they called it soul cakes and said they were honoring Christian souls in purgatory. They still wore costumes, but now they called it guising and performed songs or prayers in exchange for treats, an early form of trick-or-treating. In medieval England and Ireland, the practice of souling became common. The poor would go door to door on All Souls' Day, offering to pray for the dead in exchange for soul cakes, small round cakes marked with a cross. Each cake eaten represented a soul released from purgatory. It was charity wrapped in theology, but underneath it ran the older current, the belief that the dead needed sustenance, that the living owed them something, that the boundary between worlds required careful negotiation. The Church also introduced the concept of praying for souls trapped in purgatory, that in-between realm where the not quite damned and not quite saved awaited judgment. This teaching resonated with the old Celtic belief that spirits lingered between worlds. The theology was different, but the underlying anxiety was the same. What do we owe the dead, and what might they do to us if we fail to honor them? As Christianity tightened its grip on Europe, Halloween took on darker associations. The Protestant Reformation of the 16th century rejected Catholic practices like praying for the dead, but the folk traditions surrounding Halloween persisted. And as Europe entered the age of witch hunts, Halloween became associated with witchcraft and devil worship. The belief in witches was not new. Throughout history, people had feared those who supposedly wielded supernatural power, those who could curse crops, cause illness, or control the weather. But in the 15th through 17th centuries, this fear became a hysteria that swept across Europe and later to the American colonies. Halloween, with its emphasis on the supernatural and the spirit world, became linked in the popular imagination with witches' sabbaths, gatherings where witches supposedly met with the devil to perform blasphemous rites. The reality was far more mundane. The witch trials were driven by social tensions, religious fervor, and the scapegoating of marginalized people, especially women. But the mythology endured. The image of the Halloween witch, riding a broomstick, wearing a pointed hat, stirring a cauldron, has roots in these dark times. The broomstick was associated with women's domestic work. The pointed hat resembled those worn by heretics and outcasts. The cauldron was simply a cooking pot, but in the fevered imagination of witch hunters, it became a vessel for evil potions. Black cats became associated with Halloween and witchcraft because they were believed to be witches' familiars, demonic spirits in animal form that aided witches in their evil deeds. In reality, cats were simply common household animals, but their nocturnal habits and mysterious behavior made them easy targets for superstition. During the witch hunt era, cats were often killed alongside their supposed witch owners, leading to an increase in rat populations and, ironically, contributing to the spread of plague. Other Halloween creatures found their origins in European folklore. Bats became Halloween symbols because they were nocturnal creatures drawn to the Samhain bonfires where they feasted on the insects attracted to the flames. Their leathery wings and association with caves and darkness made them seem sinister. Owls, with their haunting calls and ability to turn their heads in unnatural ways, were thought to be messengers of death or the transformed souls of the deceased. The jack-o'-lantern has its roots in an Irish folk tale about a man named Stingy Jack, who tricked the devil and was condemned to wander the earth with only a hollowed turnip lit by a coal to light his way. Irish immigrants brought this tradition to America, where they discovered that pumpkins, native to North America, were much easier to carve than turnips. The jack-o'-lantern transformed from a wandering soul's light to a protective charm, placed on doorsteps to ward off evil spirits, or perhaps to welcome them, depending on which tradition you followed. When Irish and Scottish immigrants fled famine and poverty in the 19th century, they brought Halloween traditions with them to America. But Halloween in America was initially confined to these immigrant communities. The Puritan settlers, who had dominated early American culture, viewed Halloween as a Catholic superstition at best, devil worship at worst. They banned its celebration, just as they had banned Christmas for a time. But America was changing. The waves of Irish immigration in the 1840s, driven by the Great Famine, brought millions of Catholics to American shores. With them came their customs, their stories, their holidays. Halloween began to take root in American soil. In the late 19th century, American Halloween began to evolve into something distinctly different from its European ancestors. Community leaders and social reformers, concerned about the rowdy, sometimes destructive nature of Halloween celebrations, worked to domesticate the holiday. They encouraged parties focused on games, seasonal foods, and costumes, while discouraging vandalism and pranks. The early 20th century saw Halloween become increasingly commercialized. Greeting card companies produced Halloween cards. Costume manufacturers began mass-producing outfits. The tradition of trick-or-treating, which had existed in various forms for centuries, became standardized in American suburbs in the 1950s. This was the decade when modern Halloween truly crystallized. Post-war prosperity meant families had disposable income for costumes and candy. The baby boom created neighborhoods full of children. Suburbia, with its safe streets and community cohesion, was the perfect environment for kids to roam from house to house. Parents welcomed the tradition as a wholesome community activity, a far cry from Halloween's occult origins. Candy companies, recognizing a massive opportunity, began producing individually wrapped candies specifically for Halloween. The holiday became the second largest commercial holiday in America, surpassed only by Christmas. By the 1970s and 80s, Americans were spending billions on costumes, decorations, and candy. But even as Halloween became commercialized, it retained echoes of its ancient origins. The costumes still served the purpose of disguise and transformation. The jack-o'-lanterns still lit doorsteps against the darkness. The emphasis on death, ghosts, and the supernatural remained central. Halloween had been sanitized, made safe for children, wrapped in cellophane and marketed, but underneath the commercial veneer, the old currents still flowed. Every Halloween symbol carries layers of meaning, each one a palimpsest where ancient beliefs show through modern interpretations. The skeleton, now a cheerful decoration, was once a memento mori, a reminder of mortality. In medieval times, people were intimately familiar with death in ways we can barely imagine. Plague, war, and famine were constant threats. The skeleton represented not just individual death, but the universality of death, the truth that beneath our skin, we are all the same. Ghosts, the spectral figures that haunt Halloween imagery represent our complex relationship with the dead. We fear them, but we also long for them. They are unwelcome intrusions into our world, but also potential messengers from lost loved ones. The belief in ghosts is nearly universal across cultures, suggesting something deep in human psychology. Our inability to accept that death is final. Our need to believe that something persists. Vampires, though now often portrayed as romantic figures, were originally embodiments of primal fears. The fear of predation, of having one's life force drained, of the dead refusing to stay dead. The vampire legend has roots in various cultures, but it was Bram Stoker's 1897 novel Dracula that cemented the vampire's place in Halloween mythology. The vampire represents the ultimate transgression, death overcome not through salvation or resurrection, but through feeding on the living. Zombies, the Walking Dead, are a more recent addition to Halloween iconography, but they tap into ancient anxieties. The zombie originates in Haitian Vodou folklore, where it represented enslaved people, the ultimate loss of autonomy and will. In modern Halloween culture, zombies represent conformity, mindlessness, the loss of individuality. They are us, but hollowed out, going through the motions without consciousness or choice. Werewolves embody our fear of the beast within, the idea that civilization is a thin veneer that can be stripped away, revealing the animal underneath. The full moon, long associated with madness and transformation, triggers the change from human to monster. The werewolf is neither fully human nor fully animal, trapped between two natures, another liminal being, perfect for Halloween's Between Worlds theme. Even the colors of Halloween carry meaning. Orange represents the autumn harvest, the pumpkins and fall leaves, the dying year. Black represents death, darkness, and the unknown. Together, they symbolize Halloween's dual nature, the celebration of life's abundance and the acknowledgement of death's inevitability. Today's Halloween is a strange hybrid, a holiday that has traveled through time and across cultures, accumulating traditions, shedding others, transforming constantly, yet remaining recognizable. In America, Halloween has become primarily a children's holiday, focused on costumes, candy, and relatively safe scares. But it has also become an adult holiday, with costume parties, horror movie marathons, and haunted attractions that push the boundaries of fear. Universities and urban neighborhoods see Halloween as an excuse for revelry that would have shocked the Puritan settlers and bemused the ancient Celts. The costumes have evolved far beyond ghosts and witches. Children dress as superheroes, princesses, and movie characters. Adults create elaborate costumes or opt for humorous or provocative outfits. The original purpose, disguising oneself from wandering spirits, has been forgotten, replaced by self-expression, creativity, and cultural commentary. Haunted houses have become big business, elaborate productions with professional actors, special effects, and increasingly intense scares. They create a controlled environment where people can experience fear safely, can flirt with death and danger while knowing they'll emerge unharmed. It's a far cry from the genuine terror the Celts felt on Samhain, but it serves a similar psychological function, confronting our fears in a ritualized way. The horror genre, in literature and film, peaks around Halloween. We watch movies about serial killers, supernatural entities, and apocalyptic scenarios. We read books that disturb our sleep. Why? Perhaps because Halloween gives us permission to explore the dark side of human experience, to acknowledge the existence of evil and death without being overwhelmed by them. Some religious groups still condemn Halloween as devil worship or occult practice. Others have created alternatives like harvest festivals or trunk or treat events that preserve the community aspects while removing the supernatural elements. The debate over Halloween's appropriateness continues, echoing the old tension between pagan and Christian traditions. Meanwhile, Halloween has spread globally. Countries that never celebrated Samhain or All Hallows Eve have adopted Halloween, usually in its commercial American form. In Japan, costume parades have become popular. In Mexico, Halloween has merged with Dia de los Muertos, creating hybrid celebrations. The holiday continues to evolve, to adapt, to mean different things to different people. What is Halloween, really? Strip away the costumes and candy, the decorations and parties, and what remains? At its core, Halloween is about thresholds. It marks the threshold between seasons, between light and dark, between the living and the dead. It acknowledges that life and death are not separate realms, but exist on a continuum, that the boundary between them is more permeable than we usually admit. Halloween is when we dress up as what we fear or what we fantasize about becoming. Children play at being monsters, testing out their courage, learning to laugh at their fears. Adults costume themselves as idealized versions or dark inversions of their normal selves, temporarily shedding the responsibilities and restrictions of daily life. Halloween is when we tell ghost stories and watch horror movies, not despite our fear, but because of it. We need to confront the darkness, to name our fears, to stare into the abyss, but from safety, surrounded by friends, with the lights ready to switch back on. Halloween is when we remember the dead, whether we call it Samhain, All Souls' Day, or simply a spooky holiday. We may not light bonfires anymore or leave out soul cakes, but we still acknowledge, even unconsciously, that those who came before us deserve remembrance, that death is not the end of our responsibility to the departed. Halloween reminds us that civilization, with all its comforts and certainties, is fragile, that just beyond the porch light's glow, darkness waits, that beneath the mask of normalcy, we all harbor secret selves, that the rational, ordered world we inhabit is a construct, and that older, stranger forces exist beneath the surface. But Halloween also celebrates community. Trick-or-treaters rely on the generosity of neighbors. Costume parties bring people together. Even haunted houses are social experiences, groups of friends clinging to each other as they navigate darkness. Halloween may be about confronting fear and death, but we confront them together. Halloween will endure because it serves needs that don't change, even as the forms change. Humans will always need to mark the changing seasons, to acknowledge mortality, to test their courage against fear, to create moments of inversion when normal rules don't apply. The details shift with each generation. Today's children trick or treat with LED-lit buckets and wear costumes from the latest streaming shows. They may know nothing of Samhain or soul cakes, of crop failures or deadly winters, of a time when darkness was truly dangerous and the dead seemed terrifyingly close. But they still dress up and venture into the night. They still knock on strangers' doors in the darkness. They still tell ghost stories that make their hearts beat faster. And in doing so, they participate in a ritual that stretches back thousands of years, connecting them to ancestors they'll never know, to peoples who spoke languages long dead, to a time when the barrier between worlds grew thin on an October night and humans lit fires against the dark. Halloween is the holiday that refuses to be tamed, that retains a whiff of danger and transgression beneath its candy-coated exterior. It's the night that belongs to the other, the dead, the dark, the different, the dangerous. And perhaps that's why we need it, why it survives despite periodic attempts to sanitize or eliminate it. Because we need a night that acknowledges what we spend the rest of the year denying, that we will die, that darkness exists, that not everything can be controlled or understood. We need a night to play with our fears, to costume ourselves as something we're not, to venture into the dark and return safely, changed by the experience. And so, every October 31st, as the year dies and winter approaches, as the veil grows thin and the shadows lengthen, we light our jack-o'-lanterns, don our costumes, and step out into the autumn night. We become part of something ancient and ever new, a ritual that connects us to the past and carries us into the future, a threshold night when anything might happen, when the normal rules don't quite apply. The dead may or may not walk on Halloween, but we do. And in that walking, in that embrace of the dark and strange and spooky, we affirm something essential about being human, our ability to face our fears, to laugh at death, to find joy even in darkness. And now, the story ends. The jack-o'-lanterns flicker and fade. The costumes return to closets. The spirits, if they walk tonight, return to wherever spirits dwell. But the night remains, and next October, it will come again. Good night.